From a legal liability standpoint is Glenn Cohen, Harvard Law professor, and thank you very much for being with us today, Professor.
My pleasure.
All right, those are some very strong statements coming from the VFW. We've talked about the emotional aspect of this story. And as the scandal is starting to cause infighting within the ranks, do you think, or what do you see happening next, actually, in the legal process? Could there be a class action lawsuit against the VA hospital system?
Yes, there could be, although there are some challenges to bringing it in that form. So the main vehicle for bringing a lawsuit here is a statute known as the Federal Tort Claims Act. This is a general statute by which the government waives its immunity when you try to sue it for the action of a federal official or a federal department. So that is the lawsuit they would have to bring. The problem with bringing that lawsuit is before you bring it, you're required to go to the agency that's responsible, this case the VA, and basically present the claim administratively for them. And only once they either deny it or give you less than you asked for can you then initiate suit in the federal courts. So essentially, before a class action could start, all the individual people who want to bring these claims would have to first go to the VA, present their claims to the VA, have them denied, and only then could they go to federal court. And once in federal court, there are additional challenges to bringing this as a class action.
So if they do go down that road, a very long road ahead for the veterans.
Yes, I mean, there's a statute of limitations of 2 years, so they can't take too long. They have 2 years before they could file their administrative claims. But once they do so, it has to be denied, which can take a while. And then at that point, in the federal courts, in order to bring a class action, you have to get the class known as certified. And this basically is a judgment by the court that to proceed as a class, as a group lawsuit, rather than a single individual lawsuit or a group of lawsuits, you have to pass through a series of procedural hurdles. And usually that determination can itself take a number of years. The other thing to mention is that there is a limitation on attorney's fees for Federal Tort Claims Act lawsuits. Even if they win at the end of the day, the attorneys can only get a maximum of 25%. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's much less than you could get in a regular tort lawsuit under state law. It's not available to these people. So they may also face difficulties in getting enough lawyers who are interested in pursuing this for them.
Professor, in the long run, I mean, how are all these lawsuits going to improve the actual system itself?
I mean, so there's a question whether it will. In general, the rap on medical malpractice lawsuits, quite generally, is it's very unclear what effect they have on improving the quality of care. So I don't know that we want to put too many eggs in this basket. I think of right now, the VA is feeling the pain on a political level, and it's not clear to me that federal officials being sued will be changing their behavior much more than they're already changing their behavior. In many ways, the people who are the key decision makers in the VA, they're very responsive to these political pressures. And my guess is, in terms of changes of behavior and changes of VA protocol, they're much more likely to come first from the political process. And then these lawsuits will, if anything, be about compensating people who believe that they're injured. But they'll have to prove that they're injured. They'll have to show, for example, that had they not been put on a waiting list, had they gotten the care immediately, their loved one or the person would have survived or been healthier. And that itself has some formidable challenges.
It certainly does, and it doesn't seem like there are any easy answers for the short-term or the long-term solution. But Professor, I want to move on to talk about a different topic as we leave the VA scandal there for a second. And that is the shooting that took place over the weekend in California. 22-year-old Elliot Rodger killed 6 people and injured 13 others before taking his own life in Santa Barbara. Rodger was the son of a famous Hollywood director. He was interviewed by police back on April 30th at the request of his own parents, but the police did not take any action. Here's what police had to say. All right, so I don't think we have that soundbite from police here, but okay, let's go ahead and play it.
Obviously, looking back on this, it's a very tragic situation, and we certainly, wish that we could turn the clock back and maybe change some things. But at the time that the deputies interacted with him, he was able to convince them that he was okay.
And so, Professor, I think what we see here are some of the challenges that come along with these. You know, the obvious question is, why could this not have been prevented, especially when the shooter's own parents called police on him here? And so another question this might pose is, so these victims here and their family members, they have grounds for a lawsuit. Can you answer both of those questions for us?
Yeah, so the first thing to understand is my understanding is the police were called in. So in general, when you talk about a therapist and the like, there are two reasons to breach the privilege with someone you're treating. One is threat to themselves. You think they're a suicide risk. The other is threat to others. You think they're going to kill someone or do something bad to someone who's identified. My understanding is that the police were dispatched to this young man on his parents' insistence, largely on threat to self. They thought he might commit suicide, and that was the basis of the determination. Quite generally, when the police fail to do something, as opposed to do something bad, it's much harder to sue them. The Supreme Court, for example, has said that you can't sue under your constitutional rights when the police fail to take an abusive parent away from a child, for example.
All right, well, Professor, we'll have to leave it there. Very complicated legal issues to discuss, and unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we'll have to let it go. We'll talk to you again, though, and we thank you for your insight on both of these issues.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, you hope for easy answers, Francesca, but in those two cases, it doesn't seem to be easy ones to go along with those. But we'll be back with more here on America's Forum, and the discussion will continue after this break.